morning or good evening. I'm Megumi Izuka, and welcome to the SDG Global Festival of Action from Japan. Today, we'll be discussing SDG 2 on zero hunger. For those watching at home, you can join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #TurnItAround. Globally, 8.9% of the population, or around 690 million people, go to bed hungry every day, and the figure has been on the rise since 2014. Hunger is often caused by conflict, climate change, and natural disasters. The COVID-19 pandemic has added a challenge, driving more people into hunger and even to the brink of famine. Eradicating hunger is not just critical in saving the lives of people, but also for changing their lives, creating resilient society, and building peace. This has particularly come into the limelight when the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to WFP last year, recognizing the link between conflict and hunger. Today, we have speakers from multiple sectors implementing amazing works to provide food assistance to people in emergency situations, improving nutrition, helping boost agricultural productivity. Our first speaker is Mr. Itaru Furuta, head of WFP's field office in Damazin, Sudan. He's currently engaged in food assistance to IDPs in the country. Our second speaker is Mr. Sean Kerrigan, National Director of World Vision Rwanda. He has been leading the team serving vulnerable children in Rwanda. Our third speaker is Ms. Susanna Sumpu, the Head of Development Policy and Planning Division at the National Development Agency of Mongolia. She's professional with experiences in designing solutions for sustainable and climate-resilient development. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Itaru Furuta, who will share with us the initiatives being undertaken by his office in Sudan and how they have led to achieving zero hunger.
Hello, thank you for having me in this special event. I'm Itaru Furuta. As introduced, I'm working in Damazin in Sudan. First of all, I would like to start by showing a map of the operational area of my office. Blue Nile state, that's squared in red, is situated in the southeastern part of Sudan, bordering Ethiopia in the east and South Sudan in the south. Blue Nile state has experienced conflict between the government and the opposition forces, especially before the independence of South Sudan, and has generated widespread IDPs. In this context, our office's main target of assistance are to support these IDPs, estimated about 80,000 people who fled from their original villages and settled across the state where they feel safe to stay. They do not have a stable income, and they also do not have their own land for agriculture. WFP has been providing food assistance through in-kind food distribution. We also provide school meals to the students, and we also assist the malnourished children through nutrition support. Last year, the peace agreement was signed between the government and the opposition forces. We hope that the situation will start stabilizing and allow the IDPs to return to their original places and to cultivate their own lands. I would like to add two more notable assistances that was initiated from our office last year. Last year was a very difficult year for people all over the world, but indeed for the people living in Sudan too. In addition to the pandemic, the economic situation got worse due to the political instability of Sudan, and also a huge scale of flood struck mainly in the areas close to the Nile River, affecting people's livelihood. The price of the staple food compared to 1 year ago is now more than 200% higher, and the life conditions of the people are getting harder and harder. From end of last year, my office started to assist more than 200,000 people to those affected by these crises with in-kind food, while people are struggling to find their coping mechanism. We aim to continue this assistance throughout this year, expecting that the economic situation will improve. The other assistance is for the refugees from Ethiopia. From November last year, the people who are affected by conflict in Ethiopia started to cross the border to Sudan as refugees, Currently, the number of identified refugees in Blue Nile State is 6,000, and we expect to grow. As part of the humanitarian team, WFP is providing foods for the refugees, as well as considering to also assist the host communities to maintain stability of the community. I'll move on to my response to the second questions, describing my previous field experiences in Myanmar and Yemen to achieve zero hunger. On August 2017, at Rakhine State in Western Myanmar, many Rohingyas left their original villages to Bangladesh following Myanmar's military conducting their security operation by burning Rohingyas villages. The freedom of movement of the Rohingyas were already controlled even before the crisis, but that became worse. WFP responded quickly to assist all populations of those affected by in-kind food distribution. This was a classical emergency assistance by WFP. But in the meantime, we wanted to do something different, aiming for a long-term solution. In Rakhine State, we have been supporting two communities. One is the Rakhine, they are the Buddhist, and the Muslim Rohingyas, to implement joint projects related to promoting food security, such as dam and pond construction. As you can see in this photo, these projects are participated by both of the communities. They not only contributed to increase of agricultural outputs for both of the communities, but also to maintain local stability and promote cooperation among these communities. And in fact, for generations, these communities have been relying on each other. It will take time, but it's our hope that these Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh return to their own land where for generations they have lived together. And this was one of my favorite assistants that I've been involved since I joined WFP. I would also like to touch briefly about Yemen because this is where the WFP's biggest operation is taking place. As you know, Yemen is in the middle of civil war. People lost their jobs or are faced with reduced income. In my operational area, during my assignment between 2018 and 2020, we provided in-kind food to more than 2 million people at more than 1,000 distribution points. The particular challenge of this operation was to timely deliver the food in very remote locations every month, since my operational areas were surrounded with mountains. I am showing some of the photos of the distribution sites, people coming to collect food with camels and like donkeys. Because the roads that connect their villages and the distribution point was not suitable for the cars. Yemen has a very rich cultural and human resources, and we wish the war ends soon so that we can focus on recovery of this beautiful nation. Whenever I do a presentation, I usually conclude by providing an anecdote, and I would like to do that in this session too. The picture you're seeing is what I took in 2018 at a Rohingya village in Myanmar. Much public attention goes to the refugee in Bangladesh, but please do not forget that there are also many Rohingyas who decided to stay in Myanmar, and their hardship of various restriction of freedom continues there. One day, after I finished observing a food distribution, when I was about to leave, one man approached me and offered some mangoes that he was going to sell in the market using his boat. So I asked him how much should I pay, but he refused to receive any money from me. But also I did not want to have them for free because I knew their situation is desperate. So we're having exchanges saying, okay, let me pay. No, you're not. I'm not gonna let you pay. You're my guest. You're helping our family. No, I'm gonna pay. No, this is my gift. So in the end, we couldn't reach a deal. Myself, as working in a humanitarian agency, I tended to think we support them and they are supported by us. But when I was leaving this village, after talking with this gentleman, I truly felt that we're all same humans in the end. The people who we support have their own pride, their dignity, and their belief, and we shall never forget that. Our work is connecting people, and that is even connecting the humanitarian workers and the people we want to help. During our regular monthly food distribution, people in the communities of Myanmar, Yemen, Sudan, and elsewhere, they come together and we and our partners ask their situation of their everyday life. They help each other carrying foods back to their homes with donkeys and camels. They appreciate the food they receive and they hope for a better future. Food gives hope, and we all know that because we feel very happy when we eat. I see the connection of people in our distribution site. This is why I like about this job and gives me energy. Thank you. That is all for me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Furuta, for elaborating on your work in Sudan and how WFP is delivering food to those who need it most. It was extremely interesting to learn your experience also in Myanmar and Yemen, and that the One Dam project has not only improved the food production, but also contributed to local stability and solidarity of local communities. And it was very, inspiring anecdotes that you have shared in the end. Thank you so much. Now we would like to hear from the next speaker, Mr. Sean Kerrigan, who will share with us the initiatives implemented in Rwanda to tackle hunger and how that has contributed to achieving SDG 2, as well as challenges and ways forward. Mr. Kerrigan, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Megumi. It's a pleasure to be with you. And hearing these anecdotes from Itaru are so inspiring and so clear why WFP has the honor of winning the Nobel Peace Prize. So congratulations to you all. You're wonderful examples and wonderful partners. It's a pleasure to get to partner with you. I lead World Vision Rwanda, a Christian community-based child-focused organization, and we feel like we are always blessed by our partnerships with WFP around the world and here in Rwanda. A special thanks to Miss Edith Hines, who the country representative for WFP here, who's a good friend and a wonderful leader, and has been instrumental in bringing people together to affect change, especially around nutrition and achieving SDG 2. I want to share with you today a really exciting program that we partner with together on that we call the Homegrown School Feeding Program. It's an integrated package focused on literacy, nutrition, health, and all the areas that affect children's lives. And it's one that we've had tremendous success with that I wanted to share with you all, and some challenges. Just to get us started here, this is a project that is a partnership between the government of Rwanda, specifically the Ministry of Health, the World Food Program, World Vision, and Gardens for Health International, and we've been working on it since 2016. You know, when I think about the Homegrown School Feeding Program, one of the things I like about it most is that when we began the design of this program, we didn't start talking about budgets and structures and challenges. We started talking about children and what are the areas of greatest need. Rwanda is one of the most densely populated countries in Africa, and nutrition is a significant challenge. Food security is always one of the primary concerns of parents. So of course, food had to be addressed, but not only food. Parents wanted their children to learn how to read and to be educated and healthy during this future that they are envisioning. And so we designed an integrated package focused around those needs that are most critical to children's lives. We started by starting a program in more than 100 schools around Rwanda in the most food insecure areas, the most difficult, most challenging areas to work in. And we began a school feeding program one that delivered nearly 80,000 meals per day to primary and secondary students. But we didn't stop there. We went and we trained teachers, parents, caregivers in how to provide for the nutrition of their children, to how to create gardens and create balanced diets for their children. And that formed a basis, a foundation, if you will, to begin the learning process. And we've seen tremendous impact on the literacy side as we focused on our unlocking literacy model of teaching children how to read. The reception of that as children have food has been remarkable. Providing food has formed a basis for children being able to learn. I remember very clearly one of the first school visits I had here, and I sat down with a teacher who told me that hungry ears don't listen. And as we've been able to feed children, of course, they've been able to learn how to read. We've seen more than a 10% increase in just the last 3 years in primary students learning how to read. And lastly, the third primary focus area is around water, sanitation, and hygiene. Of course, the nutritional benefits to children don't occur just by feeding children. They need to learn how to and have the facilities to be able to have good hygiene. So we focused on providing clean water, having toilets, and having the basic hand washing practices that are so critical to being free from disease related to some of the other SDGs. You know, as we've expanded this program beyond the initial 100 schools, we've learned a lot as we've gone. We've fed children, we've trained teachers, and we've really been focused on equity, the issue of equity. How do we ensure that all children are benefiting from this, that there aren't gender gaps, which oftentimes can occur if we're not careful. Rwanda as a country has led the way. Rwanda has, I believe, the most members of women in parliament in the world. And we have been looking at how we make sure that that trickles down to every aspect of life. More than 50% of all of the teachers we train, the farmers we train, are all women. But we also focus on this at the school level. You know, one of the sad facts is that girls, when they are adolescents, oftentimes drop out of school. And we ask the question of why? Why is that? How can we achieve equity, not just in gender, but with children with disabilities? And a lot of that had to do with the design of the work that we were doing. We've added ramps to latrines so that people with disabilities, limited mobility, can access them. We built menstrual hygiene management rooms and educated people about that. And to do that, doing that has greatly increased participation in school. You know, we've seen dropouts decrease, or absenteeism decrease from about 7% before our interventions to less than 1%. And that includes girls as well. Girls' dropout rates, which were very concerning, have dropped to less than 1% because of these interventions. We're very excited about this program, and so is the government of Rwanda. As we look to the future, we're excited to be beginning the next 5-year program, which is focused on taking the learnings that we've learned and the excellent results that we've had and expanding them, scaling them. We are scaling that into more schools, but also working with the government of Rwanda to develop a national school feeding program, beginning to ask the question and develop the solutions for how all 3.3 million students in Rwanda can be fed, can have adequate hygiene and sanitation, and can learn how to read. WFP has been an instrumental leading partner in developing that plan. We've set up a national school feeding program task force and steering committee. We're excited about what the future has for this country because of great partners like you. Thanks, Megumi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kerrigan, for elaborating on the Homegrown School Meal Program in Rwanda, which comprehensively addresses hunger, not just by provision of food itself, but with the education for water, sanitation, and hygiene. And he has also raised important points about promoting gender equality as well as the inclusion of disabled people through his initiatives. Thank you so much. Now we'd like to move on to Mr. Susanna Sunku, who will share with us the initiatives related to smart agriculture and food production systems implemented in Mongolia and their impact, challenges, and ways forward. Susanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Megumi. It's my distinct honor to be here today at the SDG Global Festival of Action with you all. I myself am representing the government, specifically the National Development Agency. And I just want to highlight firstly that the government of Mongolia recognizes the whole of government and whole of society approach as the heart of sustainable development. As such, the government of Mongolia has established institutional mechanisms, has undertaken a voluntary national review on the SDGs, highlighting policy coherence and systems thinking experiences, and developed comprehensive national SDG targets and indicators, which is scheduled to be presented to the parliament this spring. Mongolia is proud to support the Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, and we are committed to advancing the SDGs at home while also working with our international partners to achieve them globally. In the past few years, together with partners like the FAO, European Union, and domestic partners, we've taken significant phased steps in developing climate-smart agriculture approach in livestock production system, promoting ICT in agriculture, decent employment creation through agriculture value chains, quantifying and monitoring NDCs under the Paris Agreement, extending social protection to herders with enhanced shock responsiveness, and improving early warning and early action and mitigating the zoo disaster risk. You might be wondering, right, what are these for and why is it so specific in Mongolia's context? Well, Mongolia is a predominantly a nomadic agriculture-based country. Agriculture is our second economic strategic sector. It basically accumulates most of the economic revenue aside from mining. So it is not only an economically significant sector, but it is also a socio-culturally significant area of sustainable development. So I do want to just delve very briefly into some of the approaches and experiences I've just shared, primarily the issue on climate smart agriculture approach. This approach provides means to help stakeholders from local to national and international levels and identify agricultural strategies suitable to the local conditions. So for Mongolia's case, we have vast territory and each region is quite different in terms of natural and landscape. So successful adoption of the approach to livestock husbandry will not only support tackling problems in livestock productivity, carrying capacity of the pasture, and effects of climate change. Now, another experience I want to highlight is developing ICT in agriculture. So in cooperation with domestic and international partners, namely the FAO Mongolia, the government has adopted an e-agriculture strategy in April of 2020, which builds on agricultural policies, goals, and hence contributes directly to addressing problems of household food security, nutrition, and poverty alleviation. With the support from EU and FAO, innovative practices and approaches have been used to create decent employment through agriculture value chains, throughout which we worked with 12,000 herders and vegetable producers, 78 food processing enterprises, and created around 2,213 jobs. Together with FAO, last year, Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Light Industry has introduced new and innovative ways to engage youth and other stakeholders. Just to give you an example, on the occasion of World Food Day, we organized a contemporary art exhibition in the Fine Arts Museum to deliver the message of better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life. In conclusion, as the Mongolian proverb goes, if we speak, we have one voice. If pull, we have one power. Together, we can make notable efforts and impacts in achieving sustainable development. And at the end of my remarks, I want to highlight one issue related to COVID-19. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government, in cooperation with international partners, we have developed a program in response to the ZUT assistance. As such, we've provided to 1,000 vulnerable herders in the rural community in 6 AMAGs and 56 SUMs, which are small micro villages, where 500 tons of high energy and protein-rich concentrated animal feed, animal care kits, technical assistance have been delivered. So moving forward with COVID-19, there will need to be significant efforts to mobilize and keep the momentum going in achieving the sustainable development. Thank you so much, Megumi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sumku. Indeed, sustainable agriculture and food production is a critical element to achieve SDG 2. And it's intriguing to know that you have been utilizing ICT in engaging youth for these initiatives. And thank you so much for your presentation. Now, we'd like to begin the discussion part of the session. Despite these initiatives being implemented in many countries, the COVID-19 pandemic has posed additional challenges and has delayed progress being made to achieve SDG 2. Now, Mr. Furuta, could you please tell us about the challenges that your office has faced and how you plan to overcome them during this pandemic?
Yes, thank you for the questions. In Blue Nile state of Sudan, we do not have many reported cases of COVID-19. However, the pandemic has to some extent restricted movements of the people and commercial activities with other parts of Sudan. As I already mentioned previously in the first questions, the people are faced with challenges throughout their life, as Sudan has been an unstable and complex country since their independence. So the pandemic is, of course, a serious threat to them, but I will need to stress that it is one of the problems that people are faced with. Malaria, cholera, and other types of diseases persist and threatens the life of the people, especially the vulnerable children. While it is absolutely critical to prevent being infected by these diseases, but another very critical element is to keep taking nutritious food and build a healthy body regardless of the situation. And that remains a fundamental challenge for the people who do not have income, who do not have their own land. But now that the peace agreement is signed and is being effected, we are starting from this year to expand our coverage of areas of assistance, and also starting some development type projects for the first time in multiple locations to increase agricultural productivity. So we do have hope for improvement of their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furuta. Yes, it is very important to solve these underlying issues, including other existing diseases and improving nutrition. And because these problems come to the fore whenever a crisis happens, including this health pandemic and natural disasters and other emergencies. I believe that the COVID-19 measures may have affected children in terms of school closures and other restrictions. Mr. Kerrigan, how are you tackling these challenges during this time? And are there any new activities or initiatives to respond to these challenges in Rwanda?
Thank you, Megumi. Yes, absolutely. This has been quite a year for us here in Rwanda. The government recognized the threat that COVID posed to people here and was very quick to take rapid action, putting in lockdowns and closing schools and taking a very active measures to both trace and track and treat people that have been affected by COVID-19. And when you have a program that is school-based, of course, it's going to disrupt things when all schools are closed around the country, which they were for several months. We've been very fortunate as partners in this effort to be linked with and partnering with people who are agile problem solvers. And that's the way I would describe this team. First of all, I would say I think it's important to realize that this team has been fighting COVID long before COVID. We knew what COVID was. It was many years ago that we began focusing on issues of sanitation and hygiene, hand washing, teaching children how to do this, which are some of the best ways that we can prevent the spread of viruses, both COVID and other viruses. So we began early, but this crisis with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, was a significant disruptor. The team took rapid action, though, and quickly began looking at ways and getting permission from the government to change from school rations to take-home rations. So we made that shift in the summer of this year. We added components to those take-home rations, including things like soaps and hand sanitizers, masks, and we're able to serve children while they were staying at home. And we were able to share with them messages of how to protect themselves and their families from these diseases, how to make sure that they were protecting their children. And we've played an instrumental role in reopening of schools, which has been ongoing for the last several months. The government of Rwanda has put in strict COVID prevention measures, including the necessitation of a certain number of latrines and hand washing stations. And WFP and World Vision have been working together with the Ministry of Education to design appropriate facilities for that and to install hand washing facilities and train teachers to make sure that children, when they return to school, protect themselves and others, and so they can make sure that they begin the learning process again and not be as disrupted as this has been over the last year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kerrigan. These initiatives are really critical, and this shows how you have been so flexible in order to adjust the support in order to serve the most vulnerable people during this pandemic. Thank you so much. Now, Ms. Tunku, how about in Mongolia? Could you please share with us any obstacles your initiatives have faced during COVID-19 and whether and how that has affected the achievement of SDG 2 and how you're trying to overcome them?
Thank you, Megumi. I very much agree with both the previous speakers in terms of education and how that's been impacting the society. I do want to highlight that, as I've mentioned earlier, agriculture is our strategic economic sector. So I want to highlight the economic part of the COVID-19 effect on achieving SDG 2. So there's been preliminary studies, and Mongolia is now still in a lockdown. The lockdown period will end as of this evening. So starting tomorrow, we will, strict lockdown, I mean, we're still, under lockdown conditions. But there's been studies, preliminary studies, purely based on surveys, identifying the economic impacts, specifically on small, medium-sized enterprises and micro enterprises. And we can see that there's significant economic impact. I mean, like 80 to 90% income decrease in most households. And these are the key people who are generating the economy. And so how do we go beyond that is a big challenge. And considering that Mongolia is most of the working population and agriculture being a strategic sector, how do we look beyond COVID in terms of the development of the agriculture sector? How do we think about agriculture productivity is a very interesting topic that it's still quite uncertain. So we will have to see how this year goes. Preliminary data is there on economic growth and all that, but yeah, so job creation, job retainment in the agriculture sector will be critical. In terms of food delivery and access to food has been good. The government has prepared well in having stores and food production value chains open and in a safe manner. So that has been no problem. But there's been an interesting case where case of nutrition, because Mongolia's food staples are meat, dairy products, and root vegetables. So in terms of non-root vegetables, there's a lot of import that comes in. So during the strict lockdown in the third and fourth quarter of 2020, there's been decrease in imports of non-root vegetables, which gives us the question like how that's affected the population in terms of nutrition outcomes. And in general, I think achieving SDG 2, well, we talk about food security and that is critical, but within food security, it's really important that we focus on nutrition. How do we deliver on, nutritious foods in all levels of structure? So in terms of policy formulation, in terms of means of implementation of policy actions, and then getting back to what Mr. Kerrigan said, at schools and at the general public, how do we create and advocate nutritious foods and in line with that, better food production system. So I believe those will be key challenges moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for raising the very important points about the food production as well as how to ensure nutrition during this time. Now I would like to open the floor to all the speakers for any reflections or comments to other speakers. Would you kindly share your additional thoughts or any reflections, please?
Let me just reiterate, Ms. Samuka, really appreciate your comments. I think that as we look at this dream that we all have of the Sustainable Development Goal to zero hunger, no hunger, this is a complex challenge that we have. And it's certainly been a difficult year. I think we'll see a lot of value chains disrupted, a lot of food supplies being strained. And it's one that's going to require for us all some innovation. You mentioned digital innovation, looking at how what crops we grow, how we do that, how we increase yields, how we deliver that to the people who need that, how we get that food into the hands of, from my perspective, children, and how we understand that those challenges are multidimensional. We can't look at SDG 2 as a single goal and ignore the others. I believe that we have to look at all of those sustainable development goals together and be working at a holistic packages of interventions that truly make a difference, not so much perhaps as we invest in those children, we invest in the future of our countries and our world. And if we take that perspective, I think the future is very bright.
Thank you so much. Any more reflections from other speakers?
Thank you, Mr. Kerrigan. I completely agree with the comments you've mentioned. I do have a question from Mr. Furuta. Well, the context he's in is quite interesting, right? It's a zone with conflict, but also with fundamental development challenges like food security and food safety. So, I mean, this is, as country contexts differ, I'm just wondering with what Mr. Furuta would suggest in terms of recommending, right, and dealing with, I mean, this concerns SDG 16, SDG 1 and 2, and like Mr. Kerrigan said, it's a systematic sort of thing. So what kind of solutions do you think, or what kind of recommendations do you think are pressing and in the medium term? For instance, like in the short term, we can deliver on, and this, you know, we are more or less kind of working to prevent, but what about in the medium term? What are your thoughts on in that sense?
Thank you, Susanna, for your questions. In fact, that's the question I always ask myself, because like giving food assistance, doing food distribution is always like a short-term solution. I think changing people's behavior is the most critical thing in medium and long term. Like in Yemen and in Sudan, in both locations, even though the pandemic news was spreading out, I saw very rare people taking like social distances, washing their hands. They have their culture eating together by not washing hands. I'm not that's their culture, and that was their lifestyle. So I mean, it is easy for us to just say, okay, stop it. You need to change your behavior. But that was a challenge, and it remains a challenge. But we especially do a lot of trainings, and we provide a lot of sensitization before the distribution at health clinics, at hospitals, and any projects that we are involved. So I know, even if we explain that, they'll go to the market and just mingle and they just disappear in a huge crowd. But that doesn't really prevent us for stopping that. We should not really discourage to keep on sensitizing them, because that's they need to protect their lives. So that's what I do.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to thank all the speakers for bringing in valuable insights, and we also thank participants for joining the session. We got a lot of first-hand information from the speakers and experts working in the field in multiple sectors, and they've shared good practices and ideas about how to achieve SDGs while tackling various challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, thank you for joining the session, and looking forward to receiving your feedbacks and continuing discussions on Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.